interesting enough, I was thinking about for the last, I don't know, probably month that I have been filming at your studio for 3 years consistently, had a baby, all that stuff. And we have done a podcast together.
Yep.
But I was like, what a better person to actually talk to on camera, because we, over 4 years, right, like have figured out, I think, we align on a lot of business aspects.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm always trying to find somebody like amazing to have here. And I was like, that's
and
Alex.
You picked me?
That's Alex.
Jeez.
The GOAT.
Okay.
The GOAT. Because I filmed with a lot of people prior to coming here, right? Like, and it's one of those things that I think, as most things in life, like if you start off doing something that's unnatural, like I was talking to an agent, he's like, yeah, I worked in Hollywood for a while. I'm like, I freaking hate you because you're not scared of that camera.
Yeah.
Like you can go on camera.
An unfair advantage.
Right. And then you try things with different videographers and you feel uncomfortable and you feel like you botched it. And then you watch yourself, you want to puke, and it's not exactly like what you wanted or what you had in mind. And I think you guys nailed that. And so I was like,
cool.
Crap, let's talk to Alex.
Thanks.
Forget everybody else in Brevard County.
Yeah, just me.
No.
That's cool.
I know personally you've helped myself and a bunch of other real estate agents bring what they want to talk about internally and actually get it onto film. Yeah. And get it onto film correctly. Like,
try it out.
Well, you're really good at like understanding the real estate game, which I think is super important. The real estate vocabulary and what is the message and how can we do that in a clear and concise way.
Yeah. I think it's easy when you know the real estate world really well. If you're the one on camera, you're trying to like say all of the details, and honestly, you don't need to. You gotta just simplify everything. And so we just help simplify everything. And
you do a really good job of that, though.
Thanks.
I think there's a lot of people that try and like come up with the perfect script, and then the person, behind the camera is like, just nail the script.
Yeah.
And
just read the teleprompter.
Right. And when you're on the other side, when the camera's facing you and you get nervous, and I have a few like hacks that I have
couple
to
moments.
do. I actually didn't do that today, like to get ready.
That's okay. Sometimes you don't need it.
But yeah, I mean, you do an amazing job, and so I think first of all, that's the first thing I wanted to say.
Cool.
It's awesome.
Thank you so much.
CLI is the place to be because it's where the magic happens.
We'll take care of you here, for sure.
In a beautiful set, always.
Yeah, and we're always changing it. We changed it just for this.
Always changing it. So
what are we talking about today?
So interesting enough, Jen and I went to Bellingham, and we,
that's Washington.
Bellingham, Washington. It is essentially Canada.
Okay.
And Chris Suarez led a conversation for 2 days. And
who's that?
Chris Suarez, mega agent, started a team, started expansion, had, I think 7 or 8 teams throughout the country, locations of teams throughout the country. Started place with Ben Kenny, who was a mega agent, big team as well. Funny enough, we're talking today, I think a lot about how we're similar in business, and those two individuals are like polar opposite, which is funny, and how that works, right? But we were talking before we started shooting, right? And he said, one of the things CEOs should do is sit in the cheap seats. Mm-hmm. And I was like, cheap seat? Like, aren't we working so hard in business to sit in the good seats?
Yeah, to sit in first class.
Or at like a sporting event, right? I think like I want to be sitting in that lower level where I can really, the nosebleed is like, you can literally sit on your couch and get a better view than nosebleed in a stadium.
For sure.
And yet the cheap seats help you understand your consumer, the public, your market, like a lot of different things.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's interesting because I know we talk about like, how do we go sit how do we make it in business to sit in the good seats?
Yeah.
And
that makes a lot of sense though. I mean, it goes back to what you were just talking about where it's like, we know real estate. I think it helps to just know your audience or know your clients. So for us, where everybody here knows real estate pretty well, holding the camera is important and knowing how to work it, but then holding the camera and being able to talk about like what your clients talk about every day is important. So I think that's like the metaphor there, right? Where you're talking to or you're sitting in the cheap seats because most of those people are your clients. So how do we understand them better?
Yeah, and you're never going to understand them if you're always kind of separating yourself from them.
Right.
Like I think it had me thinking for a long time, right? Because sometimes you want to be sitting in those forward seats with big thinkers, right? Like I think you need a balance.
Sure. And I think it's also a metaphor. Like, you don't necessarily have to sit in actual cheap seats.
Oh,
but
I take everything literally, right?
Okay,
like,
well, I mean, you can for sure.
I'm like,
but you also can just like put yourself in their shoes mentally. Like, where are they at in life?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's how I took it.
Yeah, I took it like we literally got to go sit with
we're going to buy the cheap seats.
Yeah. Well, he was telling me like he went to Inman and he was like the Uber, because Inman's like everybody's ordering an Uber. Well, I mean, it's Manhattan, and then you throw a major conference there.
Yeah.
Where people need to be there at certain times. And so he was like, my Uber was going to be like $182. And he's like, and I looked at the subway and he was like, it was like $1.80.
Wow.
And he's like, screw it. I'm jumping on the subway. Like,
yeah, let me go talk to some people.
Right. Let me understand this demographic versus like we get in an Uber, we don't talk to the driver, we get to our destination, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
It blew my. I'm like, wait a minute, this is the CEO of our organization, a very successful man.
Yeah,
and he's like
wealthy.
Yeah, wealthy. Yeah, that's a fair term.
And he doesn't have like the $180 Uber is not a big deal.
But that's how he lives his life too, right? Like, interesting enough, he's very frugal, and he was sharing with me, right? Like, his partner might not share all of like a portion of that, right?
Yeah.
But he's also probably not taking the subway like Chris would. Chris just jump on the subway.
That's cool though. I like that.
Yeah. So the other thing we were talking about while we were there is questions, right? Okay. I think, and as I was thinking about this, interesting enough, right? Like in video form, do we ask enough questions? Because a lot of the content that I did some self-reflection, right? A lot of the content that I'm shooting is like statement pieces,
right,
versus questions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And are we a society of statements, or are we like?
Yeah, it's always good to ask questions. I think as we're getting further into like careers, you probably, I want to phrase this right. You really get comfortable with like knowing what you do, and so you probably ask a few less questions because it starts to feel a little bit easier.
Right.
But that's kind of when I just heard Hermosi, one of our favorite people, talking about this, where he's like, there's a huge ignorance tax that you have to pay when you're getting into something, and you're starting from zero, you're learning your business. There's so many things to learn that just keep you constantly taking in new information that you have to take in to do a great job at what you're trying to do. But there comes to a point where you hit the top of this level, and that level feels pretty easy. But then you have to start asking new questions again, where it's like, okay, this feels easy, but that's because I haven't broken into this next level yet. And so you need to start asking questions again and start going, how do I get to this part? And that's where you're going to start to pay some more ignorance tax, basically.
Right.
Questions are good. I feel like even though you might start to feel a little comfortable in what you're doing, there's so many things to just always be learning.
Yeah. You asked me to sum up 2 days.
Yeah.
I was like, man, if I
was like, give me your best takeaway.
Well, and first of all, like the 2 days that we spent felt like a week.
Yeah.
Like, I walked away from day one and I was like, I was drained. I still stayed up and filled out a bunch of notes and a bunch of questions that Chris asked me, and that drained me even further. But I was like, this was like, but anyways, to sum up 2 days, I was like, it's a beginner's mindset. And a beginner's mindset, I think, is based in questions.
Okay.
Like kids.
Yeah.
Right? Kids. Why?
Right.
Tell me more. Why?
Yeah, because they don't know.
They don't know. They're curious.
So you're saying to approach everything as if you're a beginner, basically?
Yeah, they did a bunch of case studies on top CEOs who, right, like CEO of Salesforce. Mm-hmm. He's like a beginner's mindset. And he's running a multi-billion-dollar company that builds sales tools.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
but you're also hiring people that are better than you at every individual thing. And so you should be anyway.
Right.
And so you're always asking questions because you're hiring people that know more than you about these things.
Yeah.
I think that's important too. I mean, I specifically am trying to hire people here that know way more than me about video. It's like, yeah, I know a decent amount, but people know more. So how can we hire those people? And then I can keep asking questions. John just did something fancy over here with the white balance, and I didn't know how to do that. And it's cool. Learn how to do it.
Yeah, I was like...
He's speaking Spanglish.
You guys lost me on all of that. He threw up a couple of quotes, and so I love quotes, right? So a lot of times the question is harder than the answer.
Okay.
And if you can properly phrase the question, the answer is the easy part. Elon Musk, who's arguably...
best entrepreneur ever. Close.
I mean, he's on a mission to go to Mars. I don't know anybody else that's on that mission.
Yeah.
And what he's done with almost every company, it seems like he touches, right?
Yeah, that's good. I think it's, we all say, I need to do something or we need to do this. But to that point, it really should be, what question can we ask right now that helps us get to the answer? So if you need... if you have a certain goal in mind, rather than just writing down that goal of, hey, I want to hit maybe this amount of revenue, maybe it's a question of how many phone calls do I need to make, or how many, people do I need to reach out to, or how many videos do I need to create to build up the reps to get to that goal, rather than just talk about the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
and then how would a kid ask now I'm reframing. It's crazy to me that in 2 days he's got me to reframe a big portion of my thinking of if you told a kid this is the goal, what questions would they ask?
What do you think? What's your takeaway on that with the ask questions? And
I don't know, right? It's one of those things that for me, questions, once I start, I can get on a roll. That was the interesting thing for me, right? And I had to write them out.
Yeah.
And as you start to write one or two, you're like, oh, think of the opposite. Think of a negative. Think of a positive, right? You're kind of going through.
Yeah.
I think a kid would say, well, how long is it going to take?
Yeah.
And then you would give.
It's like they're almost naturally working backwards.
How long would it take? And you would naturally give an answer, right? X period of time. Well, why can't we do it sooner?
Right.
And why does it take that long? Right. And you're like, damn.
Yeah.
If I did ask myself that question.
That's a good point.
Could it change the entire trajectory?
Yeah. There's status quos out here, right? Where you should have a 5-year goal or a 10-year goal. And that's how long it takes to get to that thing. Or there's stigmas out here where it's you should be looking to be worth a certain amount of money by 35 or 40 years old. But why not faster? Or why,
we've talked about that.
Yeah. Why not? Your actions directly have outputs. So inputs and outputs, the more you do, the more that happens. So
20 times faster.
Yeah. Exactly. And I don't think you need to be looking at everything where it's well, this is the average, so let me shoot for that. It's why? Why is that the average? Why can't I do it faster?
Right. Yeah.
Or why can't I do it better? I think we ask that question a lot.
So this is one that I hadn't heard, and it's Albert Einstein, right? If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in 5 minutes.
That's interesting.
Both of us are going to, we got to go cut down a tree. We each get handed an axe, right? And I'm going to sit there and sharpen my axe for 55 minutes and cut it down in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
It instantly took me to that, and yet it's also on its own.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Because he's thinking about what's the question,
Yeah, I like that.
Well, I think in my brain, I was okay, iron sharpens iron also, right?
Yeah.
So I went back to here's the cheap seats again. Do I sit in the nice seats so that iron sharpens iron? Because it's right. My brain was exploding several times.
I love that. Did they give you kind of questions to try to give you a framework of, hey, this is a good question to start with to get your question Does that make sense? Or
Well,
like
they
a
gave us a
template?
whole framework of questions, but interesting enough, we did this like exercise, right? So 8 of us around a table, and they're like, somebody has a problem in real estate. So first one to come up with their number one problem in real estate, blurt it out. And so they did that, and then it was 10 minutes of 7 of us asking questions about that problem.
Yeah.
And then you had to take like 20 questions, boil it down to 3, and then boil it down to what's the one. And it was like,
boom, there's the answer. Because everybody asked the questions.
I was like, instantly for my team, I'm going to be like, what's your problem? And the rest of us are going to ask questions, and you'll figure it, like, literally it takes 5 minutes, and
that's cool.
You can figure out somebody's biggest problem in 5 minutes.
You know, recently we're looking at a space in Orlando, and one of the biggest obstacles is parking. It's in downtown Orlando. So I think I just naturally kind of went to the problem solving side of like, okay, there's a solution here, right? So let's start asking the right questions. And I said, who owns the parking lot behind it? And found out who owns the parking lot. And funny enough, interesting business. The guy actually leases the parking lot from the owner of it, and then he has a whole business basically arbitraging the spaces.
Love it.
Weird, but cool.
That's what parking guys do.
Yeah, it's cool. So ended up calling him, and I was like, what is the win-win here? I was like, I need 2 spaces. What do I do? And we started talking about a couple different things, talking about how he like does it per plate and whatever. And I said, that's not going to work. Like, we have guests coming in. Everyone's going to have a different plate.
Right.
So just problem solving, asking him where he is in his business, what he needs, like what his turnover is. And I was like, okay, so does it make sense for us to have a magnet that just has like our CLI logo on it? And we put it on the car whenever we have a guest in. And then your parking monitor person knows like, oh, they have this magnet, they're good to go. And that's the solution. So it's funny, you just get to the solution by asking the right questions. And this space hasn't been leased for a little bit because of parking.
Right.
And I think it's funny where it's like, man, you just start asking questions and you have a solution.
So how do you get the sticker on the car?
It's just a magnet. So whoever comes into it's just whoever comes in the studio will just walk out, put a little magnet on their car.
I'm thinking like, how do you get the magnet to the gate?
Oh, like this right here.
No, to the gate who actually lets you in.
Oh no, you can just walk. You can just go in. It's like a paper. Like it's $9 a day, but we're avoiding the $9 a day thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing that we talk about often is like the leverage component of business, right? Like,
something you don't realize in the beginning.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Well, I think we're hardwired that way, right? Like,
yeah,
we are hardwired that ego. Like, I can run. That's what I wrote down in my work.
I can work 25 hours a day.
I can run through any wall.
That's right.
And we had to do this like exercise where you write to your past self, and it was like, yeah, your energy actually does go down. You're not invincible. You can't run through walls.
I don't know that your energy has gone down. I know what you mean, though.
Yeah, I mean it has. I'm learning to contain it.
Okay.
And yet, I'm looking at Chris up on stage, and I'm like, he runs these massive businesses that are highly profitable, like
right.
And he does it all through leverage.
Yeah.
Like, I was really trying to figure out like how do you like, and he's now figured out how to kind of chunk it down where each business is one day of the week for him, and he does that or I think
that's
now
interesting.
Now he says
he's like, so I can't have more than 8 business, or I can't have more than 7 businesses then. Like,
well, now he does them in a half day. Okay. And he only does it 4 days a week because he needs the 5th day to actually do some other things, right? Like some follow-up, something that doesn't directly involve running that company. Yeah. And it's all done through leverage. Like, it's all done through who he has hired and more importantly, like who he's hired and who he's given decision-making power to. Like, it doesn't need to come through me unless the building's on fire.
Right.
It doesn't need to come through me. I've now enabled
it went up the chain, and now that can finally come to me if if the problem wasn't solved. I think we also hold on to. I'm definitely guilty of this in the beginning for sure, where I held on to like, I want the best experience for the client, and I'm the only one that can provide that, right? But it's actually the opposite of that, because the more you grow, the less valuable you are to the client, because you're not able to provide them your full time. Right. So when you actually hire great people and you have a good team behind you, the value and the, what we're able to give to the client is actually higher than if you just continue to do it yourself. And I think it's important. It's like my time is only, it's finite. So when your phone is blowing up all day long and you have emails that you can't get to and you're just trying to sit here and do the actual work, you can't, if it's just you need to leverage people so that, people are actually taken care of.
Yeah. I think I've understood leverage for a while. I haven't understood empowerment. Like it's still my baby.
Yeah.
Like I'll bring in the leverage because I can't physically do it all.
Yeah.
And yet I still want, and it's like, why
I could be better at that.
If it's the right person in the right seat, like I was talking to somebody that I had no idea, who's an amazing individual that I had no idea worked for Chris for so long. And I was like, oh, and it was after hours. I was just sitting there talking and I was like, how long?
Yeah. What's the relationship?
Wait a minute. Wow.
He
found the right person and enabled her to make the right decisions for the company that really saved time. What's the framework in which finding the right people?
I think that's always a work in progress. I think you need the culture first and foremost. It's like one of our biggest things that we talk about when we're going to Orlando. It's not how can we serve people. We have the systems down. We know how to, take a pretty photo, but when you're trying to find the right people and you're trying to make sure that they're able to continue how you want the business to go, culture is really truly everything. Like, is everybody on the same page? Is everybody on the same mission? Are we casting the same vision across the board? I don't want to cultivate a team where there's just some lone wolves out here and they're on their own mission and we don't even know what the vision is.
Yeah.
I think it's important because when you start to do that, we're at the point, I mean, it's not like we're a massive company by any stretch, but we're at the point where some people follow us online and we'll get messages that are like, hey, I love what I see online for how you guys work together. I'd love to be a part of that one day. And I think that that's kind of the trick. It's like, how do we have this culture in this team where people want to be part of it?
Attraction.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And yet you've made some really amazing hires. So it's not just culture.
They're decent.
Really good hires.
Yeah, they're awesome. Everybody's awesome.
I keep waiting for you to screw up one day.
We did recently, to be honest. And, it was like, it's not, I think Gary Vee says you have to hire slow, fire fast. Mm-hmm. I've been lucky to not have to fire a lot. But recently, there was somebody and it's okay. It's like, and it wasn't even like a horrible, drawn out thing. It was like, it's just not, the culture is absolutely everything. So if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. Because that one person, it could be, and let's say it's a sales position and let's say they're cranking a few $100,000 a year of revenue for you, but I hate the word toxic, but we'll just use it.
They're off culture.
They're off culture. Correct. Yeah. And
you don't have to be
it flows into everything.
Yeah.
If you have that negativity, it's going to, everybody else that was awesome and positive and, mission forward is going to lose that because of one person. Yeah. So I think it's everything. You're going to stop attracting the right people if you let the wrong people stay.
Yeah.
That's my 3 cents on it.
It's just interesting too, right? To find great people versus good people.
Mm-hmm.
So if culture is number one, how do you find that great person?
Yeah.
I struggle. I mean, it's not that we struggle with it. I struggle with it mentally.
Yeah.
We just made an amazing hire in Flourish, right? And it was like,
yeah,
it's just funny how
and how did you find that person? Was that through an ad, employment ad? Or?
Yeah, employment ad.
Okay.
And we're like, we got no chance of actually landing her.
Yeah.
And we did. And
I mean, that's great. It could come from anywhere. We're running an ad on Indeed right now. Have 120 something applicants, which is amazing. But we also have a couple things in Facebook groups and have another 20 something from there. And it's interesting. It's the people on Indeed are a lot of them are qualified, but the people coming from Facebook that like know who we are passionate. And I think it's just finding the passionate people. And I'm not saying it could easily be somebody from Indeed, but I think it's just interesting, like where you get applicants from, and they probably have a different mindset.
Well, and you were telling me, which is something that I have a funny story on, but you essentially set up a mousetrap to start to eliminate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, which is working really well.
I'm gonna shoot you a video. I'm gonna shoot a video. You send a video back.
Yeah. So I sent a video of myself, basically selfie style, of, hey, this is who we are. This is what we've done. This is what we're looking to do. This is what the position will be. Can you send me a video back just like this one that's 30 seconds long that tells me a little bit about you and why you'd be a great fit? That is going to immediately show us who they are, how they can socialize. Are they talented at working a camera? Because the right person is going to put a little more effort into it. Mm-hmm. Are they going to tell me how great they are or how good of an asset they are to the team? There's like certain things that we're looking for it. Right. And so first of all, it takes a little guts to like go make a video of yourself to send to an employer. So number one, it's like, man, you just crossed a pretty big hurdle right there where you're like, yeah, I'm going to do it because I want this job, versus somebody that's like, I don't really know. I'm not going to get on camera because I don't really want this.
So this is years ago. We had 99 applications for a marketing position, right? Mm-hmm. Years ago. I did the same thing.
Okay.
0 videos back.
0.
I was like,
I think we have around 10 right now, out of like 130 applicants.
Yeah.
So
I went 99 to 0. I was like, what are we doing wrong? Like,
wow. Well, part of it is like that. I would assume like these are video people that I'm talking
absolutely.
to.
But if you're a marketing person,
sure, that's like stage 2. Like they should also know how to do it.
Like it was just
shoot something.
I shot mine on my iPhone. It wasn't this production video. 99-0. And when you told me you got like 10, I was like, yeah, you did.
I mean, it's just a position. I think it's like people took it as like, oh, this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
So
how many takes did it take you to shoot that video to send to them?
I think 6.
Oh, see,
the first one was acceptable. And I was like, I think we could do it a little bit better, like get a little bit more information into it. And then we tried like 5 more times, and I was like, okay, I don't like any of those. I'm going to try one more time. And if this one doesn't work, we're just going to send the first one because it's good. And then that last one, I was like, yep, that was it. So,
there you go.
Yeah. It took like 6 or 7 times.
Misery loves company.
Yeah. I mean, we're not one take over here. I mean, sometimes, but not
sometimes.
Yeah. If you have the opportunity to do it a couple times to make it right, then do that.
Yeah.
But I also tried to make it not look highly professional because I shot it on an iPhone on purpose. Mm-hmm. I didn't want it to feel like, oh, we're putting this super high level of production into something and you have to match it. I wanted them to feel like they could do whatever they wanted with their video back.
So what was the best video?
So far, it's somebody he did a good job.
On the iPhone?
No, for sure not. For sure not an iPhone.
Elevated the game.
He shot it nice, lit, like good lighting. He did a good job. Had a mic on. It says a lot. I think effort shine through always.
Yeah, like
I think it's funny actually when you see people that I see this a lot where people, how do I say this? People are looking for a job online and they'll be like, I applied to 200 places and I haven't heard back from anything. Do you know what Ben did over here? Ben was, first of all, like Johnny on the spot. He wanted the job. And then he sent a follow-up email, and then he sent a letter in the mail. And I was like, nobody does that.
Nobody.
Effort shines through.
Right.
And all you have to do is put in a little bit more effort. All you have to do is light the video a little bit better. Right. Just show that you want it, and that's the right person.
Yeah. A little bit of effort.
Shout out, Ben.
How long did the letter take to get here is the real question.
I don't know. You must have next day aired that thing. It was quick.
I know.
You're like, well, 3 stamps get there faster. Oh, yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah, it is good.
It's just
Ben tried. That's the difference.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing that in 2024, like, if you just give it a little effort, like, you can actually shine. Like,
absolutely.
Like, if you had asked me in, I don't know, make it a round number, 2000, that, like, you could still send a handwritten letter to get a job.
Yeah.
Or we could send a handwritten letter. Like,
because it's died so much that now it's like, now it separates you again.
Right. Like, email's going to die. Email's going to die.
Yeah.
Email's not.
It's like postcards still work, you know? And I mean, as much as I love video and digital marketing, print marketing still works if you do it right.
If you do it right.
Yeah. Please don't just like go out and no newspaper ads. They don't work.
Throw something together in 5 minutes on Canva and say, that's a good postcard. And
right. But there's still value in certain things. It's like Gary Vee, just to bring him up again, talks about how there's, you know, the medium of which you advertise doesn't really matter. It's where the eyeballs are. So like a Super Bowl ad, it might feel like it's way too much. It's like $5 million for, you know, a 15-second slot. But the amount of people that actually see it versus how many people would see it in a regular season football game is astronomically different.
Right.
So it's worth it to buy that ad.
I would like to know how these companies can afford, first of all, just the ad spot.
First of all, is it Temu? Can we talk about that real quick? It's not Temu?
I don't know.
Did you see all the ads for? I was like, what? They've bought like 6 or 7 ad spots. I'm like,
right.
What's going on here?
We'll just spend a quick $100 million. Then there was other people who brought in like these famous actors and actresses. I was like, how much?
And like several of them.
Right. Like 6 of them. I'm like,
yeah. Like, how much did you spend on this ad, not just the placement of it?
Like, I haven't checked recently, but I used to be like in the sports world, right? You like to get somebody that was notable was like $30,000 for like
that
an
was
hour.
Way more than that for those.
Right. Like, this is an average athlete, $30,000 for an hour. I'm like, okay, it takes you probably an hour to shoot a 30-second commercial, maybe longer.
Yeah.
And it's like,
they were spending some money
mind.
For sure.
Blows my mind.
Yeah, but anyway, the point was just you can reach people in a lot of different ways, and it's honestly easy to stand out because all you have to do is try.
Yeah.
Yeah. All you have to do is give it effort.
All you have to do is answer your phone. We've talked about that.
Yeah. Like, I have 2 rules of business. You answer your phone, you do what you say you're going to do.
Those are 2 good rules.
That's it. That's how you win.
Answer your phone
and do what you say you're going to do.
Do what you say you're going
because
to do.
Nobody does. It's bizarre. I mean, when you're dealing with any like other profession, it's hard to get people on the phone. When you go call somebody, you know, months ago I was trying to find an irrigation guy for my house. Oh,
I still am looking.
I called. I'm not kidding. I pulled it up on Google and I went line by line, call. It took probably 13 times to get somebody to answer. These are businesses listed on Google.
Right.
This is not like Joe's Irrigation down the road that just has a business card.
Right.
And it blows my mind. It's like nobody picks up their phone.
But do you think it's because they're too busy? Like they literally are busting at the seams because they can't get workers to, right? Like who wants to go dig ditches and put in irrigation at the end? Like all these kids want to be these.
I do whatever I possibly can to pick up the phone.
Absolutely.
You know, yeah. I think that they are busy. But who isn't? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm too busy and I'm sorry. And I'll take your number.
Yeah.
And in 6 months,
I'll text you back real quick if I don't answer. I'm like, hey, I can't answer right now. Or I'll say, hey, can you please call the business number? You know, right. Christy will help you.
Right.
Because, you know, I'm trying to make sure we're providing for people. And I'm only one human. And I understand. Like, I empathize, but then nobody even calls you back.
Right.
Yeah. So, I don't know. 2 rules.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone. Do what you say you're going to do.
It always astonishes me, like,
yeah.
At the end of the day, like,
I don't know how I'm still surprised by it, but I am.
Well, because it seems foreign to us.
Yeah.
It really does, right? Like when you're in the mode of building a business
mm-hmm.
to not
right. Like, you're literally turning down business. And I understand, like, you might be busy and you're like, hey, life is good right now, but how many times can you really do that?
Right.
It's going to catch up.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And maybe people have a different goal. Like I want to keep growing because I think you're either growing or you're dying. I really believe that. I know that's it's a saying, but it's impossible to just stay right where you are.
Right.
You know,
you're
competition
either learning or you're dying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right. You're always going to have people that want it real bad and they're right behind you. And if you just stop and you're like, yeah, we're doing good. I like where our revenue's at. It won't stay there.
Yeah.
It will go down if you, if you let it.
Yeah. It instantly popped into my head. Chris asked this question, like, and I think it's because they're prepping to like IPO and right, you're looking at the business differently. But he said, you know, as a CEO, if your board of directors, right, even in a small business, just say like your board of directors voted you out as CEO, and they're hiring an amazing CEO to replace you, what would he or she do differently that you're not doing right now?
Ooh, that's a great question.
So I had a boss when I was like 15 and a half say, like, every
15 and a half. We're going like back to where we're like counting halves. I'm 7.5 years old.
I was happy that I had a job, like a legal job, W-2 employee before I was 16. Like, I had to have a work permit. My parents had to sign off on it.
I just had to point that out.
I know. It's weird. I don't know why I said that.
15 and a half. He had a boss.
And he said, like, almost every shift to me, he said, you're replaceable. And he was head. He was the big boss, right? Head of this water park. Head. He's like, I'm replaceable. And the reason I said my age, I think, is because I haven't thought about that for probably 20 or 30 years, like consistently. And then Chris brings it up, and I'm like, damn, like, if somebody was coming and replace me, what would they do differently? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's a great, like, you're always replaceable. My mom actually used to say that to me when I was like first starting to work, probably around 15 and a half. And she, you know, I worked at a restaurant at the time, and she was like, you know, you have to take it serious no matter what the job is, because you are replaceable. Like, no matter what the job is, the CEO is replaceable, the managers are replaceable, because, well, they have to be. Like, things happen. You know, that person could have a traumatic life experience and they're out of your business. Well, you have to replace them. Everybody is replaceable. Right. So it is definitely a good thing to keep in mind. But I really like that idea. It's like, man, if I got voted out, what could I do today to basically ensure that I don't get voted out? Right. How do I be that person that people would vote you back in?
Right. Well, and I think as small business CEO people, right, like, we get stuck in it. It's ours. Like,
Yeah.
We don't think about, like,
but we can always be making better decisions.
Yeah. Oh, I think it pushes you to say, like, let me step back for a second and think about where am I applying my time? Because time is everything, and are we moving the needle in that time, or are we just kind of we're moving the needle, but we could be like moving.
Yeah, there's a saying I heard recently where a CEO's job is allocation. So they're allocating resources of people and money.
Yeah,
and so you do have a limited amount, regardless of the size of the company. You do have a limited amount of money and people for your resources. And, you know, we can always be doing a better job of like, all right, we have a certain amount of funds here, let's run this kind of advertising. Or we have these amount of people, let's put them on this. And I'm trying to do a better job of making sure I'm allocating time better. And this year it's a big goal of mine to not be shooting anymore, which sounds crazy to say out loud because people don't really know that. But it's like it's super important, to be honest, because it's that whole, I need to be picking up my phone, I need to be talking to people, I need to be making sure that relationships are truly important to me, and I need them to know that they're important to me.
Yeah,
you know, and
can't be in two places at once.
I can't be in two places at once. And I used to think that I was the only one that could take a great photo or make a great video, and I'm happy to say all of the guys here that shoot are better than me at video for sure. Like, they're just great at it.
Yeah.
And the more I see that, the more I'm like, okay, I need to be finding more people to join the team that are great at those things so that I can continue to do what makes the most sense, allocating my time and energy as well as everybody else's.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's great leaders. We allocate and we prioritize, because if at the end of the day, if your company is left to prioritize for itself, people go all different, like
Yeah.
quickly. It's
Yeah.
like,
That's the
wait, you
CEO's job or
spent
the
a
leader's job.
week working on this, and
Right.
we're putting it in the trash can.
Yeah. That benefited what?
We're putting those hours in the trash can and start
For
over
sure.
because I, as a leader, didn't prioritize your work to actually.
And it's always, that's your fault. That's not the employee's fault.
Right.
That's.
I thought I was doing what you.
Yeah,
wanted me to do.
exactly. I think that's I just talked about this recently. I don't know if this is like from parenting or just like how I don't know, but I've always just really believed like whatever goes on is actually my fault. I think it's if Ben doesn't show up to a shoot on time, I'm like, what did I do that caused that to happen? I'm not just saying that. I really believe that. And I think it's like important to just take accountability for everything going on because this is your business. This is your responsibility to make sure that things are flowing well. And I think things would operate smoother in the world in general if we just took some more accountability. And we're like, hey, this is this is my responsibility to make sure that it works.
Right.
Yeah.
When we get a win, it's the team got the win.
100%.
When we get a loss, it's on me.
It's my loss.
Right.
Yeah.
Not theirs.
Yeah, because there's something that you could have done better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
you might not have thought so at the time, but then it shines like, oh man, I could have done that better.
Yeah. We always say, what's my DNA in this?
Yeah.
Because if I put my DNA on it and it still screws up, then it's my fault. But if I put my DNA in and we win, okay, well, great.
Yeah. It's good.
What's my DNA in each employee? How am I
feeding into them?
Right. Like at the end of the day, in our business, everything is partnership, right? Partners.
Yeah.
They're not an employee. They're a partner.
Right.
And if I can get them to their goals, I'll get to my goals.
Absolutely. Yeah. Zig Ziglar, right?
Right.
What is the quote? I love the quote. It's, help everybody else get what they want and you'll have everything you ever wanted, basically.
Right.
And it's all about just focusing on people. I almost like the idea of not even having your end goal in mind. It's like the goal should just be to take care of the people around you. And then eventually, it'll work out.
Yeah. Some deep thoughts.
Yeah.
And some good ones.
You got anything else for me?
Like when I get put on the spot, it's like, what's a
podcasting is an actual skill.
Right.
I think people think of it as just something that you just go and sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah.
And sure it is and it can be, but I think when I watch a podcast online, first of all, it's an entrepreneurship podcast.
Right.
100% of the time. And there's big differences in people that do these podcasts, and you can tell the amount of reps that went in and the amount of work that went in to actually make it a valuable, just packed full of information podcast, because those people are very good at asking the right questions. They've done research ahead of time. They know how to get you to start the next thing.
Right.
And the more I realize that, the more I want to help other people be good at that too.
It's
because I thought it was more of a talent before.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, it might be a little bit.
Yeah.
But I really think it's actually just a skill. Yeah. It's reps. It's a skill that you can learn and you can improve on. And, I look at Chris Williamson, who has a huge podcast on YouTube, and he talked a little while ago about his first podcast and how he looks back at it and it's like awful, and he asked horrible questions and it didn't go well. And it's like, you look at somebody like that has incredible podcasts right now, and it didn't, like, he didn't have the talent of it. It's just the skill set that you build up over time.
Yeah.
So I think that goes with anything though.
I think great podcasts really ask questions that kind of break down some stuff that
Mm-hmm.
maybe is right on the line or just over the line, right? Like,
Yeah.
like you think of
Makes you go a little bit deeper than maybe you're comfortable going.
right. Like somebody in our group was saying, like, Oprah, right? Like, she is just amazing at asking tough questions.
Yeah.
And being inviting and open and right, like,
Yeah. Yeah, she's great at it. I mean, one of the best ever.
Yeah, I mean, she kind of set the stage, right? I believe that some of those shows set the stage for what
yeah
jobs now created in a podcast.
And you got to wonder what was she like in the very beginning?
Oh,
you know,
right.
I'm sure she improved over time too. She might have had a talent. You know, there's definitely a difference between talent and skill. But even, you know, sports are always an easy thing to bring an analogy into. It's like, sure, LeBron James was probably talented and you know, as a kid growing up and whatnot, right?
An 8-year-old.
Yeah, as an 8-year-old, sure, he probably had a good amount of talent, but it takes shooting the basketball 1,000 times a day, you know, and just doing over and over and over repetitions of like improvement to be at the level that he's at. It's not just talent can only carry you so far.
Right. Yeah, I sent you since we're on the basketball, I sent you the Curry.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like Stephen Curry, like greatest three-point shooter in NBA history, and then you look at how many shots he's actually
it's crazy.
It is so like
it doesn't even make sense that you can shoot that many times in your life.
Yeah, it's like, what did he do? Just every day, all day, like
basically.
But he had somebody feeding him the balls, right? Like he's figured out the leverage, and I can get in a few more.
And that analogy applies to everything. It's not just basketball. It's everything in life. You just keep doing it and you keep improving. You know, we talk about when we're hiring people here that are good, but one of the first conversations is like, it takes reps.
Right.
Like,
well, and I think that's what we talk about a lot. Well, most people don't pick up their phone, don't do what they say they're going to do, and they're not willing to put in the body of work that it actually takes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to shoot 3 million three-pointers. No. Or 5 million or whatever the number was, right? Like it's a stupid number, and it's like, well, if that is my job, I'm getting paid very well by the NBA. Like,
right?
Why doesn't everybody have?
Well, that's like I don't remember the exact numbers here, but it's something like for every 1,000 podcasts that are created, it's like 10 make it past the first 5 episodes or something like that, and then another. It's like 40 more episodes in. It's only like 10% of those make it. And so this is part of being able to stand out. Like standing out also just takes consistency. Like you just keep doing the thing because Andy Frisella, somebody else that I listen to quite a bit, is adamant on like, there really isn't a fail. It's you only fail when you quit. And so you literally just keep going, and there's an ingredient of time that is just missing in most people's, like, it's all about aggressive patience is like it's like, how much can I possibly do in a day, but also keep it in my head that I have to be patient over time. Like, I know inputs equal outputs, but it also takes people seeing the brand for a couple years and seeing that you're doing the work and seeing that you're improving. And then 3-4 years down the line, then they start, then you start to work together, and then it's a compounding effect. And so, we can build upon skills. Yes. And we also need to know, like, it takes time.
It takes time, and it takes
a lot of time,
10 times more than we think. Right. Like, it really does.
Yeah.
And the nice thing, I mean, where we live in the world, right? Like, you can put in those reps. You literally can put in those reps and figure it out. You just can't quit.
Just can't quit.
Don't quit.
I'm not going
to. It's funny because it's not, our team gets together twice a week and we talk about similar stuff, right? And it's like a couple months ago, they were like, why is talking about quitting? And it was like, it doesn't even register for me. I have not allowed that thought. Like, as soon as it starts to enter, gone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Like,
we just talked about this yesterday, right? Because thinking about if I want to say this or not. I was talking about Orlando, and I said, this is a big move for us. It's really hard to expand outside of this area, and there's a lot of moving parts to think about, and it's way up on my priority list that I make sure that everybody here is consistently taken care of, and they don't feel they're not going to be left behind. It's like service will keep getting better.
Yep.
And all of those thoughts are going through my mind, and And I said to you, this point right now is where most people would quit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to just think that out loud and just say that, and it helps reinforce, like, man, if it feels hard, we talk about this a lot, where the harder path is the right path. Like, if we're looking at a couple different things, which one is the more difficult one? And it's probably the right one.
Yeah.
And there's no quit. It's just how do we improve? And, if you have that feeling, it's like, it's okay. It's supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be difficult.
We were studying Patagonia, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but he basically, right, the founder who's now living an amazing life, he was like, how do I start a company that doesn't steal my soul? So that's the first quote. But then, like, he kind of follows it up with, like, how do I make it difficult for my competition to follow?
Yeah.
Like,
always a good question.
He's starting a clothing company that,
as if there's not a million of them.
Right.
Right.
And the company can't steal my soul. And how do I make it so challenging for my competitor to even follow me?
Yeah.
Like, we're going to make it difficult for them. We're going to make it uncomfortable for them.
Yeah.
And he did it because he started, like, if your jacket ever was to rip, you just send it back and they fix it, and they, like, it's a jacket for life. And it was like, North Face is scratching their head, like, how the hell is this guy doing this, right? Beginner's mindset. Make the difficult decision of, no, I want a jacket that if this customer buys this jacket, it's for life.
That's a good way to tie in the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, you ask hard questions like that. And also, if you're into business and you're trying to grow something, maybe also ask the question, what do I not want to do? And maybe you don't know exactly what you want to do. But if you know what you don't want to do, you don't want to grow a company that doesn't suck your soul, right?
Right.
Start with that and then kind of work backwards.
Yep.
I think it's a good way to do it.
Yep. Love it. Thanks, man.
Thank you. That was fun.